WFLA Now will begin momentarily. WFLA Now will begin momentarily. Streaming live on WFLA Now, powered by 1-800-ASK-GARY. Here's J.B. Buno.
No DNA analysis yet on the remains found at the Carlton Reserve. Dental records confirming those remains are that of Brian Laundrie. However, the cause of death and time of death remain big questions in the ongoing federal investigation into not just the death of Brian Laundrie, but also the murder of Gabby Petito. Plus, Northport police saying that there was a lack of cooperation from the Laundries early on in their investigation. Hey there, everybody. JB Buno here with you live on WFLA Now. Great to have back here on stream. I think our audience is going to be very pleased to see 8 on your side investigator Masa Saidi back here with us, everybody, on WFLA Now. You can use hashtag HeyMasa, hashtag HeyJB. This is a stream that was willed into existence by folks on Twitter. There were just so many people who were following all the updates over the course of today and wanted to stream. We're here with you live on WFLA Now to kind of break down what we know. The big thing, Masa, that we have found out over the last hour or so is that no DNA analysis yet, despite some of I'll get into this, but despite some of the social media commotion that was out there, no DNA analysis yet on the remains that were found here at the Carlton Reserve. This is, Northport police and the FBI, of course, sharing out the information that this is Brian Laundrie. The remains are Brian Laundrie, the skeletal remains, the portion of the skull that was found, the dental examination confirming, according to the FBI, that those remains do in fact belong to Brian Laundrie. However, still questions remain. When are we going to find out the cause of death? When are we going to find out the time of death? When was Brian Laundrie deceased? These are things that we might find out potentially, maybe, from thorough examinations of the remains that are actually, let's make this very clear for our audience, Masa. I want to get you involved here, but we are trying to figure out exactly where the remains are at this hour. I don't know if you have any more details to share here, but I know that we have submitted a follow-up inquiry to Northport Police. Are they with an anthropologist, the Sarasota County Medical Examiner's Office? Where are these skeletal remains right now?
Yeah, that is a huge question, and you'll have to forgive me because I was working on another story today, but I am all up to date on everything that's happening today with the Brian Laundrie case. But yeah, a big question right now is who has the remains. The attorney for the Laundrie family, Stephen Bertolino, had said that the remains were with a anthropologist, but now there's some confusion about that. The Northport PD put out a statement earlier on Twitter, and they said that it was from the medical examiner's office because the medical examiner, I guess due to some online chatter, was getting contacted by media all across the country, and they wanted to set the record straight by this regarding the DNA analysis done on Brian Laundrie's remains. And the medical examiner said the remains found on October 20th, they were confirmed to be Brian Laundrie's by comparing the remains to known dental records of Brian Laundrie. And the medical examiner said that no DNA analysis has yet been performed. So it sounds like potentially there still could be DNA analysis that is performed on those remains. And the medical examiner also said samples will be submitted for DNA testing once the examination of the remains is complete by the ME's office. So that right there is the confusion, because we thought, we were under the impression that because of what the attorney had said, Stephen Bertolino, that the remains had been transferred. Now it looks like perhaps maybe they were partially transferred. If I had to guess, we don't like to guess, but if I had to venture out, try to make sense of the statements here, perhaps part of the remains were sent to a forensic expert, and perhaps the rest of the remains are still at the ME's office. Our Allison Henning, who was on the story today at 4, 5, and 6 at Channel 8 here in Tampa, she did reach out to the ME's office to try to get clarification, and the ME said no further comment, JB.
Looking for your hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyMasa questions and comments in the Facebook Live, and hello to YouTube. Hey there, YouTube. Let's just throw out some names here from YouTube, like Jason Justy, Simon Smith, Clarence Spangle, a lot of folks chiming in here on YouTube as well. But let's get to some of the comments that are coming in. Giselle Cavallero pointing out here, hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyMasa, how are dental records matched and where do police get them? Also, is it the jaw or singular teeth that are matched, and how does the process work? Do you want to, I have a little bit of information here on this, but do you want to go first? Because I know that you've been, you're feeling your jaw, Masa. You're feeling it. Are you feeling all of the teeth?
I think this is called the mandible. I think I'm trying to go back to the interview that I had with Joe Scott Morgan, a death forensic specialist, and he said from the information that has been released, he said this part of the skull he thinks was intact. I think this is called the mandible. I shouldn't be saying medical terms if I'm not 100% sure, but this area of the skull, and my understanding,
yes, the mandible is
is
the large portion of the bottom jaw that goes from the basically the bottom of where your ear is all the way out and around to the other ear. Basically, it's this section. Yes, so there's going to be a GIF here in moments of you and I just kind of going like this back and forth.
My understanding is probably what your understanding is, that they look at what we know, that the FBI authorities were in touch with the Laundrie family getting DNA samples, and it looks like they also got these dental records, because apparently this happened very quickly, much more quickly than we've seen in, you know, a regular old case. So police were on the lookout for this. Authorities had collected his previous dental records. You would get that from the dentist, from the dental office, and I guess they look at cavities, JB, or
and it's not. This is something that happens quite a bit. Dentists will receive, of course, word that they need to obtain the dental records and the dental history of a particular patient of that dental office. They'll then examine it, do a thorough examination, and you'd be surprised at how many characteristics, unique characteristics that are unique to your. It's not as indistinguishable as a fingerprint. A fingerprint, of course, is an extremely helpful. What's the word I'm looking for here? It's
accurate.
Very accurate. Thank you. Extraordinarily accurate means of identifying a person, matching the identity of a person. Thank you. But teeth are an extraordinarily accurate way as well, and that's what the examiners used, as far as the forensic examiners used when they collected these skeletal remains at the Carlton Reserve. That was their best bet as far as coming to a determination. And let's not forget, this is the FBI. They have all of the means at their disposal, and they're not going to announce this unless they are certain that these dental records do match that of Brian Laundrie. So there had to have been enough indistinguishable characteristics there within the dental remains to confirm that, yes, that this was in fact Brian Laundrie. We know that there's so much out there about speculation out there. We understand, but the DNA testing will eventually be conducted and will provide us, hopefully, with more answers than we know right now.
Yeah, but as you said, JB, this is confirmed by authorities. So this is Brian Laundrie's remains that were discovered, and the skull is a bone that's very strong, from my understanding, and teeth obviously did not deteriorate. So they were also they also last a while in the elements in the swamp, where many other parts of the body might not. The teeth, the skull. These are parts of the body that can help investigators identify remains in cases like this, where perhaps significant amount of time has gone by and that body has not been recovered.
Let's talk about the other aspect of this story that we're going to be streaming here. We're going to be here with you for approximately another 20 to 30 minutes with 8 on your side, investigator Masa Saidi, who is taking time out of a very busy evening schedule to join us here on WFLA Now, so she deserves a lot of applause here.
Always a pleasure to be here with you, JB.
A lot of applause on YouTube, especially. I know the YouTube comments section likes to light up here for you, Masa. Let's get to some of the comments that we have coming in, and the last one that just came in is from Jenny Patterson. Hashtag HeyJB, I don't think we need to blame the police on misidentifying Brian. Remember, his parents lawyer up, and would it or wound up on their shoulder, but I guess they want to blame someone besides themselves. This is kind of a fractured comment here from Jenny, but I think I understand what she is saying. Let's talk about the statement that was released by Josh Taylor, Northport Police Public Information Officer, early today, because it was a statement that said a whole lot, and I'm bringing up my...
Yeah, please bring up yours. I'm also highlighting what I think you're referring to.
Yeah, here is the entire statement that was released. And let's just backtrack for a second for those who maybe missed our stream yesterday, October 25th, 2021. So the news comes out yesterday that investigators mistook Roberta Laundrie in a baseball cap for Brian Laundrie. And that was something that, of course, we were talking about at great length here on WFLA Now, made the rounds, as you would imagine, on social media. And Josh Taylor offering this statement in response to that, in response to WFLA inquiries earlier on today. And it's a lengthier statement than I think that we anticipated, but for what it's worth, here's what it says. This misidentification did not have a big impact on costs and the investigation. Other than confusion, it likely changed nothing. There is a very good possibility that Brian was already deceased. He still needed to be found. We just wanted people to better understand why we thought we knew Brian was in his home. It was a direct result of a lack of cooperation from the family early on in this investigation. There's two things I really want to highlight here in this statement from Josh Taylor, Public Information Officer for Northport Police. First and foremost, he is saying that there is a very good possibility that at that moment in time when they thought that they saw Brian return home in the Ford Mustang, and they actually saw it was actually Roberta, that they're saying it's a very good possibility that Brian was already deceased. And given the skeletal remains that we have at the Carlton Reserve that were of course recovered there, we have been talking at great length, you and I. There's just a very good chance that those remains have been there for a considerable amount of time. It's not as if Brian Laundrie passed away a week ago or a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. That this is likely something that goes a little bit farther back into the timeline.
Yeah, exactly. And Mr. Bertolino also concurs. He said, quote, "I concur with Mr. Taylor that Brian may have already been deceased when Northport PD lost track of him, but he essentially says that this is a tragedy for two families. Any mistakes that may have been made, they should be acknowledged and used to train or educate others so mistakes are not repeated." What was the second part?
So the second part, I want to read the second part that really stands out to me. Josh Taylor saying here at the end of the statement that the Brian Laundrie, Roberta Laundrie, that mix-up that occurred was a direct result of a lack of cooperation from the family early on in this investigation. So Northport Police and Josh Taylor are saying here that way early on in their investigation, I'm looking in again at that week, that super important week in September, that week being September 13th through the 17th, the week where all of this went from here to way out of camera view, that there was a lack of cooperation from the Laundrie family at that time, and that played into this mix-up that when they thought that they saw Brian, and it was in fact Roberta Laundrie. Then we have the statement, you were just reading a portion of it, Masa. Then I reached out to Stephen Bertolino and I said, hey, Josh Taylor just said this. I just want to give you, hey, listen, we're being fair. Want to give you the opportunity to respond to what Josh Taylor just said. And he texted me exactly what you're looking at here in the center of your screen. And I'll read as follows. "I concur with Mr. Taylor that Brian may have already been deceased when NPPD realized they lost track of him. However, you can't blame the family because the police didn't know enough to follow someone they were obviously surveilling. This is a tragedy for two families, and any mistakes made by anyone or any entity involved should be acknowledged and used to train or educate others so the mistakes are not repeated." A bit of we got a ping pong game back and forth of just a very simple back and forth here with us in the middle of this as far as WFLA between Josh Taylor of Northport Police and then, of course, also Stephen Bertolino, the Laundrie family attorney. What do you make of this, Maasa?
Well, I think, by all accounts, this is a very I think the word is embarrassing.
Yep.
I think it's a very embarrassing mistake that they made. We've all seen on social media a picture of Roberta Laundrie in a baseball cap and a picture of Brian Laundrie. So people have questions about how could the Northport Police Department, while they were keeping a track on Brian Laundrie. One, what we know is on September 13th, when Brian Laundrie got in his Mustang and when he drove away, we know the surveillance was happening at that time, but it does appear that law enforcement did not follow him, did not track them. Now, law enforcement says the reason they did not do that is because he was not charged at the time on September 13th. I believe, JB, he became a person of interest in the Gabby Petito missing persons investigation on September 15th. So law enforcement says, well, on the 13th, we couldn't have followed him. He wasn't charged at the time. So then, fast forward 2 days, on the 15th, Roberta's wearing a baseball cap. She comes home.
Yep.
Roberta and Chris get out of the Mustang, and police think that Roberta is Brian. So this is obviously, I think I'm fair. I don't ever want to have an opinion, but it is an embarrassing mistake to have made and to come forward and to say this objectively. The fact that they mistook the mother for the son, it is not something that, mistakes happen. It's not something that, I'm sure it's something they wish had not happened. But let me just say one more thing about this. Through my reporting, I have not ever revealed this in any report. So I'm going to say it to you here first, JB. And I'm only going to say it because I know that the surveillance camera has now been removed. But I know from speaking with a neighbor that a surveillance camera was installed on September 11th when police went and to the Laundrie family home when Gabby Petito was reported missing. This is something that I've never reported. I just haven't. I did confirm with that person that the surveillance camera has now been removed. So I feel, comfortable talking about it. I know a lot of people have been talking about it I know that there were other cameras and other properties, but depending on what camera had been installed at what time and the vantage point, it would explain why law enforcement couldn't see very well, why they could have thought that Roberta was Chris, for example. But I do think saying a lack of cooperation from the family, I do think saying that it's, their fault. I think what he's saying with that statement is, well, they could have just told us. We could have had this open communication. That's what Northport PD is saying, right? He's saying we didn't have open communication with the family to just know. So we had to, watch them with cameras because we couldn't follow them. So I'll let the audience decide if that is a good thing for Northport PD to say it was because of that.
Let me just, first and foremost, we weren't expecting, I don't think anybody was expecting there to be this admission yesterday of this mistake by Josh Taylor. Josh Taylor is somebody who, in working with him quite a bit over the last 6 weeks, there's been opinions formed of Josh Taylor of Northport Police, but he is somebody who I really do genuinely feel does care about being as transparent as a police department can without compromising an ongoing investigation. He was providing video updates. He was sending in sound bites from inside the Carlton Reserve. He was trying to do everything that he could to show what was going on. And so for me, it's not all that surprising that he comes forward with this information yesterday saying, our team thought it was Roberta, or excuse me, thought it was Brian when it was actually Roberta. I think just the actual mistake itself, not Josh Taylor being transparent about the mistake, just the mistake itself, to your point, exactly the word that you used. I think others have used the word embarrassing. I've seen the word humiliating thrown around. I've seen the face palm emoji quite a bit on social media. This is just some of the public perception into that mistake. It's Josh really owning up to that mistake on behalf of his department. Again, he's the spokesperson. He's working with Northport Police to release information to the public. He's the public information officer. However, this is just him releasing information as to why the mistake was made. But the optics of the mistake on social media, people looking at it, yeah, embarrassing, I think is a fair summation of what we've been seeing on online in response to this story. You want to get to some more questions and comments here?
One quick thing. And the reason that Josh Taylor came out with this information is because on the 16th, Chief Todd Garrison said, quote, "All I'm going to say is I know where Brian is at." and Brian was already long gone. So he was trying to explain why the chief said that. So it's part of explaining something that was just really a big question. Why did the chief say he knows where Brian is when Brian was gone?
Yep.
Roberta was Brian. But anyway, go on, JB.
It does help us understand that section of the timeline more. And I have to be fair to our audience watching right now. I think people that have been watching our streams know that I'm a straight shooter. I keep it real with everybody. And I just have to talk about this Stephen Bertolino response, because I shared this out on social media, and the response was quite positive to Stephen Bertolino when he says here, this is a tragedy for two families, and any mistakes made by anyone or any entity involved should be acknowledged and used to train or educate others so the mistakes are not repeated. I just want to point out that the response to that last section of the statement especially has been received unlike any other previous Bertolino statement that has been put out there over the course of this story, and a lot of folks have been agreeing with Stephen Bertolino. I've been seeing it on Reddit, on Discord, on Twitter, where I posted this. So again, a little bit of there, some, it's just a strange day of statements all over the place. Statements just coming out all over the place here on this story. Masa, we've got 10 more minutes with you.
We do.
So let's get to some questions and comments that we have, and we'll try to get to as many of these as possible. And we have one coming in from Twitter from Annalika. Hashtag Hey Masa on Twitter. Why did no reporters see Roberta Laundrie and Chris Laundrie leave their house for several hours on September 14th, per Mr. Bertolino's statement? And Masa, I'll let you answer this. It's for you, but let's also just remember that this isn't the news story that it was so even just a couple of hours or a couple of days later, 48 hours later than it was on September 14th. Still a big story, but it wasn't the hyper-focused, area that Northport Street was in front of the home. It wasn't as super honed in, and this is an interesting comment here from Annalika.
Yeah, because Stephen Bertolino did say on September 14th, Chris and Roberta, both of them left and went to Myakkahatchee Creek Environmental Park and looked for Brian on the trails for 4 to 5 hours. I don't remember how many news people were outside.
Yeah.
I'm not up to date on what reporters are saying about. I don't think the Laundries were being tracked the way they are now at that time, but I will say I know there was cameras up, so I do think that law enforcement would have that video.
I do remember the original statement from Josh Taylor saying we don't track residents was the.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah, because Brian Laundrie was. You have to remember this is before he's named a person of interest. He's just somebody who came home in his fiance's white van on a cross country road trip. He wasn't. This is before the arrest warrant, federal arrest warrant for use of unauthorized access devices. Before that was issued, so that was we don't track residents was what Josh Taylor said at the time, and that he has repeatedly pointed out that there was limitations on the surveillance that could be conducted because it didn't rise to the level necessary to actively track the whereabouts of a particular individual. So
that is their take on this case.
It is.
That is Northport
PD's
take.
And then I just want to know. Is that a police policy exclusive to Northport? I want to know is that common here in Florida? Could an officer paid with publicly available public taxpayer dollar been on a public street to monitor a house and followed the Ford Mustang on public roads to the public park in their jurisdiction?
Yes.
These are, again.
I think my answer is yes to that. I think law enforcement, certain law enforcement agencies would say yes, and they would have followed him.
Neela Fisher, hashtag HJB. We'll do a 2-for-1 here across Facebook and Twitter. Neela, hashtag HJB. Why aren't the FBI releasing information on Gabby's death since Brian is already confirmed dead? And then Susie here on Twitter, hashtag HJB. Will the FBI hold a media conference and take all media questions? So let's just take this one here first. Susie, I think that we can unequivocally say no. They are just going to have a press conference and open up the floor to everybody and say, all right, ask us what you want. That's not really the FBI's method of operation. That's just not really what they do. Mas, any 2 cents on this from Susie?
All I would say is unless some proceeding, civil, criminal, something ends up happening in this case, I wonder if we're ever going to have access to the notebook, to the autopsy report.
The notebook, which
Gabby
apparently
Petito.
may be salvageable. And then back to Neela here. Why aren't the FBI releasing information on Gabby's death since Brian is already confirmed dead? And the reason is because they announce, you got to remember, I say this over and over again, and I have my sayings that people point out on Twitter, and I do use certain sayings over and over again. The FBI announces results. Micro developments isn't something that the FBI is going to put out there. Now a local police department, yeah, that's why we of course are always asking Josh Taylor for anything that he could provide us with. It's because he has more freedom to speak to the media than the FBI Public Affairs Office does. But Masa, I'm not anticipating at any point soon there just being an FBI press conference out of the blue to announce something other than a significant result in the case. Correct?
Agreed, 100%.
Yeah. Terry Baker, hashtag, hey JB. It's not a hey J, it's hey JB. Can they get DNA off the clothes that he had on him at the time that he died? And do we know whether or not there were any clothes found in the area? We know about the backpack, right? We know about the bag. We know about, of course, we know about the notebook, as you mentioned. We know about the skeletal remains. So much has been made about the water bottle that was discovered, but we don't know if any clothing was discovered that could potentially contain DNA evidence. But
that's correct.
DNA could come from the skeletal remains, and we believe that it is going to come from the skeletal remains after there is an anthropology examination of those remains, as we understand it from Northport PD.
Yeah, my understanding is that you could get DNA obviously from the bones and also from the teeth, from inside the teeth, is what I think Joe Scott Morgan had said previously.
We had a commenter come in, somebody who I think works in dental, and commented that there's a particular substance within your teeth.
Pulp. I think it's called pulp.
Yeah, that you can use.
I hate when I go by my memory, but
extract DNA.
Yeah.
And this is the mind-blowing science that is done in forensics to help solve crime. It really is an extraordinary field. Thank you a lot, Terry. Also, thank you to Facebook. I had conversations with the folks over at Facebook today, and they worked on fixing the comment feature as far as animating comments specifically from Facebook.
Okay.
And we're back up and running today.
Excellent.
Patricia Fisher. Okay, so going now to the Bertolino statement and Northport Police saying that there was a lack of cooperation. Patricia, hashtag AJB. So now they're pointing fingers.
Who's they?
I don't know. What does she mean? So why should we believe them? Is Patricia talking about Northport? I don't know who she's talking about here.
Probably she's talking about the Laundrie family from what has, from previous comments from other people. But yeah, I mean, she could be talking about Northport PD. Robin
on YouTube. Let's go to YouTube. Hey, YouTube.
Hi, YouTube.
Hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyMasa. Is it possible they'll find more of his remains, and are they still looking for them since they didn't find them all? Well, this is again apparently in response to the individuals that went into the Carlton Reserve over this past weekend discovered what appeared to be.
What do we know about the water bottle?
Nothing.
I saw it on Twitter.
Nothing.
I saw it on Brian Enton's Twitter. I saw a TikTok video of the water bottle on Brian Enton's Twitter, and Brian Enton reached out to Northport PD. And remind me again what Northport PD said?
That there was no connection, that there's no known connection at this time between anything that was discovered over the weekend at the Carlton Reserve and...
They did say that, but then later I feel like they kind of walked that back a little bit on Brian Enton's Twitter.
Let me just make sure that I have all of my information correct.
That was some video, though, like, wow.
Brian Enton, by the way, we miss him here in Florida.
Yeah.
He
told me he was going to Moab last night.
He is on his way to Wyoming, and their News Nation working on a very special broadcast on the Gabby Petito story. And let's get to where can I find those tweets from?
Okay, yep. Reading to those tweets.
The aforementioned Brian Enton. Brian, the Florida is a warmer place with you in it, quite literally, because the temperatures are dropping here in Florida, and it's right when Brian Enton leaves.
God. Yeah. No, thank God the temperatures are dropping. Not that Brian Enton left. We love Brian Enton.
Brian is a good pal. Let's get to...
We're on the same team.
Those tweets here. And okay, TikTok user Olivia Vital says that she found a water bottle yesterday, and this is coming from the 25th, so 2 days ago. 2 days ago at the Carlton Reserve, matching the bottle seen in Gabby Petito's videos. This is the moment that she says that she located the bottle close to the area where
Very
the
dramatic
laundry
video.
remains were found. Yeah, it is. It's
dramatic.
It's on Brian Enton's Twitter. She gave the bottle to Northport Police yesterday when she brought it to the police station and filed a report. Police confirmed to me this morning that they have the bottle, and it appears to match the bottle
Yes, that's what
in
it was.
Gabby's videos. Okay,
That's what it was.
So
That's what I
I
thought.
appreciate the clarification here. Appears to match the bottle, and that's very interesting. Very interesting inclusion here. So appears to match the bottle, but can we definitively say that it is the water bottle? I know that there are people that are like wanting to, slap
Hey.
themselves in the face right now because I just said that because it appears extremely clear cut and dry. But we have to be very responsible here with the information that we pass along. So
It's not, yeah, that's why I don't have anything further to say about that, because it's not 100%. They didn't say it was or it wasn't. They said it appears. So,
Olivia Grambo on YouTube. Again, hello to YouTube. We're getting a lot of YouTube questions coming in now, and Twitter coming up here. Hashtag AJB, hashtag AMASA. Don't know how the law works in the United States, and this question was asked a few times, but would the contents of the notebook and other evidence be revealed if Brian was charged with anything post-mortem? And the contents of the notebook, if they have nothing to do with the ongoing federal investigation, and it just turns out to be doodles, drawings, or
he
it
likes
just
to
turns
draw,
to-
or he liked to draw, yep.
if there's nothing there that they believe is connected to his death or connected to Gabby Petito's death, that could be a heavily redacted piece of evidence that comes out down the line, Masa, that they would redact it because it doesn't contain any pertinent information to an ongoing, or at that time would be concluded, federal investigation.
Or, civil question. We're only going to see it most likely if there is any sort of a lawsuit that's filed, or, I'm assuming at this point it might not be criminal. Obviously, if there could be some criminal charges somehow, or if there's any civil lawsuit that's filed and the notebook would be entered into evidence because it would be pertinent to the lawsuit. That is the way that we could potentially see what's inside that notebook. Or if the parents get the notebook at some point and they decide to do an interview or something like that.
Let's, Masa.
Yes, sir.
Give me an idea. I could like to go some rapid fire through some fast ones here, but it's up to you.
5 more questions. 5 more minutes.
Okay, 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes.
5 more minutes
yeah.
with Masa
Yeah.
before she has to appear
On
on our
TV.
6 o'clock news on WFLA News Channel 8,
Yeah.
your NBC station in Tampa Bay. Sin
Pushing
Miller
it.
on YouTube, hashtag AJB. Then why bother putting up surveillance camera if they weren't going to track the family? Masa, you want to talk about this?
They were. My understanding of how the surveillance cameras were there, according to the person that I spoke with, like if anybody got in front of the lens of the camera, they would be told to get out of the way. So our understanding is that law enforcement was watching the cameras, but our understanding is that law enforcement was not following Brian in a car. So they were watching the house, tracking the movements via surveillance video, but they weren't following.
Lex Lash on Twitter. Hello, Twitter. Hashtag AJB, hashtag Masa. Can Masa address a recent assertion by another journalist that Bertolino's group meetings with Brian, Chris, and Roberta on September 12th and 13th were not protected by attorney-client privilege? I think several attorneys have refuted this claim and talking about joint representation. So talking about, again, Masa being a former prosecutor here, can you speak to, and again, let's talk about the group meetings.
Conference calls.
I think of group meetings as in person. That's Bertolino was in New York. Bertolino saying that he was never with Brian
That's
Laundrie
right.
at any point. So there was communication. Let's just say, can we call it communication between all parties involved here? That were not, and they're saying that they were not, that these conversations were not protected by attorney-client privilege. Is this one of those questions, maybe give Masa an opportunity to get back to folks maybe on Twitter about this? Because I want to make sure that what do you think, Masa?
Lex Lash, tell me what journalist is saying this. It's all attorney-client privilege. He started representing the family on this matter on September 11th, so anything that they would say is protected attorney-client privilege. And I even thought it was remarkable that the attorney, Stephen Bertolino, told Ashley Banfield that there was these conference calls with the family on September 12th and September 13th, but no,
Yeah.
that is protected. Go ahead.
I thought that was very interesting. Masa, where
Yes,
are you
sir.
on Twitter so that somebody can...
Oh, yeah. It's Masa Who.
Masa
MAHSA-WHO. Masa Who.
I always love the Twitter handle for Masa. Masa who? Okay. Shibe Mom on YouTube, hashtag AGB, why haven't they done DNA testing yet? I think we can't answer this definitively from the FBI, but they have the dental remains. They're trying to determine a cause of death. They are trying to determine, and if you are going to have to go into those bones here, and you're going to have to go into them to extract potential DNA evidence or a DNA sample, then an anthropologist examining the exteriors of these remains, these skeletal remains, is likely being conducted first before you have to actually go into them. That's how I understand it from the experts that have been commenting on this, but
Yeah, from the Emmy's statement, it says samples will be submitted for DNA testing. So it sounds like away from the Emmys, somebody else, they're going to be submitted to someone else once the examination of the remains is complete by the Emmys. So yes, exactly what JB said. It's going to be done once the examination is complete.
Kid Mac on YouTube, hashtag AJB. I thought that they brought the car home Thursday and reported him missing on Friday. No, the car was brought home on Wednesday the 14th. When the silver Ford Mustang came in. Ellery Jennings
reported him missing on the 13th, according to the Laundrie family attorney. The 17th, according to Northport PD. Go.
Attribution there, a masterclass for Masa Saidi. Ellery Jennings on YouTube, hashtag AJB, hashtag Masa. Is it protocol to always go to dental records before DNA to identify human remains? And great question here from Ellery. As I understand it, the answer to this is no. That DNA can be used before dental records, but because you have to remember the remains themselves are skeletal, so there's going to be a forensics experts analysis where they determine that dental is the way to go before DNA. But if we're talking about a body that is more intact, and we're not talking just about skeletal remains, DNA is more accessible to forensic examiners or the medical examiner's office that are working on the remains that are discovered.
Sounds right what you're saying. I'm not up to date on the protocol of how you I think you're right. I think DNA would be easier, but I'm not sure. Sorry.
Let's get to this last one here from Big Rage Cruise, hashtag HeyJB on YouTube. Hello, Big Rage Cruise. Is there any video surveillance at all or on or near the reserve?
We know there was and I'm going back in my brain. We know there was a video at Fort DeSoto Park at the entrance. Do we know if there was in Myakkahatchee Creek Environmental Park?
As we understand it, it was limited. Limited. Now, were there traffic cameras that were near the entranceway? Was there any video? This is the big question. You have to remember. Is there anything other than the Ford Mustang being discovered there? Did they have any other additional evidence to suggest that Brian Laundrie was in fact at the Carlton Reserve? This was a big question several weeks ago before the remains were found. So, Masa, you got to get going.
I have to go before I get
on 6 o'clock. Just real quick, 6 o'clock. What are people going to expect?
Okay, so on 6 o'clock, my story is about the Florida's juvenile justice system. The max you can hold a juvenile before a trial is 21 days, and some law enforcement members say that's a problem. The kid is released back into the community. Court loses all control effectively, and a very small group of teenage criminals go out and commit crime after crime, causing a lot of chaos. But thank you so much for having me here, JB, and thank you, everyone. I will see you all later. Goodbye.
Masa Saidi, follower at Masa Who. Back here with you live on WFLA now. Just a couple more before we have to wrap up here. Desiree D on YouTube. Hello, Desiree on YouTube. Hashtag AJB, hashtag AMASA. Any clarity as to why the missing person report was so heavily redacted? It was so redacted that ink, it's a waste of ink if you print out that document, because at the bottom of it, it's just a big black rectangle. I mean, that's what it is. So don't go print it. Let's conserve ink because it's an enormous area that is redacted on that missing person report from the 17th. And so we have been following up and trying to get an answer to that, and we have been unable to receive an answer as to why it's redacted, and we're not surprised. Let's just point that out. Not surprised that we're not getting an answer on why it's redacted. That's not something that they're going to announce. Oh, it's redacted because it contains so-and-so information. This is a missing person report that we may never really know the contents of if it, again, pertains to a federal investigation. Let's get to Grace on Twitter, hashtag HeyJB. Did the cops know Brian was missing when they told Roberta to pick up the Mustang at the reserve? Did the cops know that Brian was missing? The cops, no. Josh Taylor in the interview said that it was news to us when they found out on Friday, September 17th, which again was part of the report yesterday and part of just, again, the initial, now all of this information coming to light, referencing that crucial week of the 13th, getting more information about it. That's, again, according to Josh Taylor. And lastly here, Sarah Hart on Twitter. Hello, Sarah. Thanks for joining us. Hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyMasa. Can you recap? I'm late to the stream. We're wrapping up our stream now, but our entire team here at WFLA News Channel 8, our award-winning digital team, is posting the very latest on, you guessed it, WFLA.com and the WFLA app with the latest on Gabby Petito, the latest on Brian Laundrie. This is going to conclude our live stream here. Again, big thanks to everybody on Twitter. This was a live stream that was really willed into existence just because we had a overwhelming number of requests on my WFLA JB Twitter, and we were going to do it on Facebook. We are on Facebook now. We were talking about Instagram as well. Can't go live on WFLA now on Instagram, so apologies to our Instagram audience. I'll try to go to my WFLA JB Instagram account and try to interact with some of the folks there, because there are a lot of folks that just use Instagram, and I'd like to have a conversation with the folks over there as well. This concludes our live stream. We go into standby mode on WFLA now, meaning that we are back live for any developments as they occur here in this story and other stories that we cover here in the Tampa Bay area of Florida, across Florida. Of course, that's us, WFLA News Channel 8, your NBC Station 8 on your side in Tampa Bay. And the latest on all the stories that we cover in Tampa Bay and across the state of Florida is on WFLA.com and the WFLA app.